Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Thank you for joining us. This is Talking Politics with me, Dr. Brian Baker, and I'm really excited about what we're going to get into today. The question that I presented in our previous episode is this: how do you know that it's going well? How do you know? As a voter, you vote for someone to come into office and you say, okay, we're going to give you a shot. Because that's what happens with elections, all right? With any election, what we as the electorate is doing is saying, all right, we're going to take a chance on whoever is saying they want to be a candidate. They go through the process of submitting all the proper paperwork, and we say, okay, we're going to vote for you come the general election and give you a chance to show whether or not you're going to do something for us, because we elect our representatives to represent us. I mean, this isn't supposed to be a trick, not supposed to be a quiz. That's the way it's supposed to work. Whether it be the president of the United States, whether it be people in the House of Representatives or in the Senate, and that's at the federal level, at the state level or local level, depending on what you are voting for, you should have an expectation that the person that you voted for is actually going to do what they promised on the campaign trail. That would be a good thing. So we have to ask ourselves, when we are evaluating the people that we hired as the public, how do we know that it's going well? How do we know that they are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing? Now, just for sake of time, I'm going to focus in on some major macro level stuff, right, that I think will help us as we consider what's going to happen in November for the midterm elections. When you start talking about people who are running for office for the U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, when we look at the midterms, everyone has to make a decision on whether or not we want to go down the same course of action that we've had up to this point since January of last year in 2025, or do we want to hire some different people to come in and in 2027 actually do something different? That's a choice that all of us get to make in our respective states. So we all get to make that choice, and everyone will get to decide who they want to hire to do the job. Now, there have been a couple of things that's come out over the past weekend, things that people have been talking about. And for me, what I want to do with this channel is really make sure, excuse me, that we're not getting into a bunch of rhetoric and all of this misinformation, but really looking at facts. Okay, so if I don't have anything to say now, my goal is to post something at least once a week, and I'm going to land on probably Wednesdays or Fridays, but I want to post something at least once every week and have some facts to back it up, and then give you an opportunity to go back and look at whether or not you agree with what I've said, and do you even know where to find the information so that you can do your own research? That's one of the things that I want to do in this channel, is make sure that people know where to find the information so that you're not just listening to someone say something and they have no point of reference, no references. They don't give you anything to go back and actually do your own research. Now, when I went to the White House website, okay, so this is very important. I went to the White House website. And you can go there, you can just type in White House and look up for the White House priorities, because that's the thing that I really wanted to look at, just to see what are the priorities of this presidential administration right now. What are the priorities that is being projected to say, like, this is what we actually think is important. Ironically, the first thing that I saw, and you can go to the website, and it's more than what I'm going to share with you today. The first thing I saw was lead the world in AI. Thought that was interesting that that's the first thing that you would see when it comes to White House priorities. Obviously, this isn't in alphabetical order, because then it has some other things up there. I'll give you a couple of buckets. Make America healthy again. Also had grow the economy, strengthen national security, reform government, secure the border. Okay, these are 6 things that were listed as priorities. I thought it was interesting that lead the world in AI is a priority at the very top. Interesting. The question that comes up for me when I see that, or when I saw that the first time around, was why? Why do we need to lead the world in AI? And what exactly is the benefit of leading the world in AI? Do we need to lead the world in AI? And when we talk about artificial intelligence, for those who may be curious about what AI is, when we talk about artificial intelligence, I'm always a bit skeptical. I'm a bit skeptical about it because for me, up to this point, I was able to complete an undergrad, two master's degrees, and a doctoral program, and I didn't have AI at my fingertips. So there was no, I need to use this type of AI to get through and write a paper. I was able to write my own papers. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having an opportunity to think about things and maybe use something as inspiration to think about how you want to brainstorm. But I've never thought like, yeah, I'm just going to have AI do it for me, because that's called plagiarism. All right. But when we talk about leading the world in AI, I don't know, and there's a lot of talk coming out in the business circles about whether this whole AI thing that these tech companies are pushing, that is even a profitable ordeal. I've seen reports where they're already having said that they spent upwards of $1.2 trillion on these data centers and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I don't think people are using AI like that. But then again, I could be wrong, but I haven't seen it necessarily in my own circle of influence. I haven't seen people using AI at a high rate, at least not yet. And I don't know what you would use it for necessarily when you talk about using AI at a large rate. I just don't know how that factors in. Nevertheless, it's one of the things that's a priority. Make America healthy again and grow the economy are the two things that I really wanted to zone in on today, though, because I think it's very interesting. If we want to make America healthy again, then what's up with this measles deal, this outbreak of measles over the last 2 years since January of last year? What is going on? Now, again, I'm not here to talk bad about any administration or anything like that. That's not necessarily what I want to do, but I do want to present some facts, and you can decide whether or not the priority that's listed, make America healthy again, whether this lines up with what is proclaimed to be something that they want to achieve. So measles, for those who may not know, in 2025, and you can go to, by the way, you can go to the CDC's, the Centers for Disease Control website, and you can type in measles if you want to know the data around how many outbreaks or cases, we should say. I don't want to use outbreak. Let's use cases. Let's do that. How many cases of measles were reported in 2025? Okay, 2,288 cases. In 2026, so far this year, now keep in mind it's only June 17th as of this recording, 2,073 cases in 2026. Now, if you go to the CDC's website, you will see that there is a precipitous drop off prior to 2025 when it comes to measles cases. All right, you're looking at not even 500 cases, not even like close to 500 cases if we want to be honest. And if you go from 2024 to 23 to 22 to 21, you will see that there is no time over the past 5 years where measles cases were well over 1,000, let alone 2,000 cases. So the question becomes, what happened? Why are we seeing such a huge amount of cases of measles, something that honestly, for the most part, was not a thing? Now, you may be asking the question, is there a way to combat measles? And the answer is yes. Again, if you go to the CDC's website, I'm just going to read a little excerpt here so you can look at it for yourself later on. The measles, mumps, and rubella MMR vaccine is very safe and effective. When more than 95% of people in a community are vaccinated, coverage that's greater than 95%, most people are protected through community immunity, herd immunity. However, vaccination coverage among U.S. kindergartners has decreased from 95.2% during the 2019-2020 school year to 92.5% in the 24 to 25 school year, leaving approximately 286,000 kindergartners at risk during the 2024-2025 school year. So obviously that's not good. Okay, that's not good. Was anyone saying that they shouldn't get vaccinated? Has that been said by anyone? Anyone out there? I think there has been someone, might be the current HHS secretary, who's said some things about vaccines and trying to link those to autism, where there's actually like no evidence to support that. I mean, as someone who believes in having evidence-based practices and you utilize evidence-based practices when you're trying to implement initiatives or projects and things like that, and especially when we're talking about looking at whether or not we should do away with some type of vaccine, I just think it's irresponsible, if we're, to be honest, to say you shouldn't do this, that you shouldn't get a vaccine when you look at the Centers for Disease Control website and they're telling you, hey, by the way, if you actually do this, then you have herd immunity and it's more likely that people are going to be protected. Over the last year and a half, let's just put it that way, over the last year and a half, 2025 to now, I mean, it's almost a year and a half, not even that. We're talking well over 4,200, 4,300 cases of measles, right? 4,300 cases. And if you combine all of the cases in the 10 years prior to that, I don't think it even comes close. But again, you can look that up for yourself, so you don't think that I'm just hating. I'm just putting out there what's already in the public domain. Okay, so again, go to the CDC's website if you want to put in www.cdc.gov/measles/data. You should be able to pull that up pretty quickly. Okay, now the other thing, grow the economy. Grow the economy. All right. The question that I would ask when we look at these priorities, we say the White House priorities is to grow the economy. The problem with saying things in a macro level, grow the economy, is that as someone who has an undergrad in business and has a master of business administration, I don't know what that means. Grow the economy, I don't know what that means specifically for the individual person. How does that help me? So we got to think about this. What are the things that voters are going to pay close attention to when we talk about the economy? Because what happens on Wall Street and what happens with these IPOs on Wall Street and these different companies that are able to have stock and all of those things, well, that's good for some large corporations, but for the average person who's trying to pay their bills and make ends meet, how does growing the economy actually work for them on an individual level? Now, there are some things that people pay attention to, and you can't lie to them when they are seeing it for themselves in different ways in their own personal life. Now, if you have never gone to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, if you go to their website, there is a thing called the Consumer Price Index, the CPI. You may have heard that term. If you haven't, that's okay. Now, the Consumer Price Index is a statistical metric that measures, right, the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a representative market basket of consumer goods and services. And it's the most widely used indicator of inflation and deflation in the economy. So when people talk about CPI, that is a big deal. Okay, it is a statistical metric, right, that people are going to use, and it's most widely used to be that indicator of inflation or deflation in the economy. Now, inflation, if you want to know what that means, essentially is whether or not things are going to be more expensive, right? Are they more expensive? Is it inflation, meaning that if I paid $1 for a bag of rice this year, is it going to cost me $1.20 next year? And if it's going to cost me 20 cents more next year, that's what we would call inflation. Okay, that's inflation. It costs more. All right. So now when we look at the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, we can see, according to, again, you go to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So this isn't me. This is a government website. It says that the CPI for all urban consumers increased 4.2% over the last 12 months. In other words, things are more expensive than they were last year. Okay. Now, to give you some ideas of what that means, they go into greater detail. The index for energy increased 3.9% in May after rising 3.8% in April. The gasoline index increased 7% over the month. The index for food rose 0.2% in May after rising 0.5% in April. 3 of the 6 major grocery store food group indexes increased in May. Okay, so that's something you might want to pay close attention to. The index for food at home rose 2.7% over the 12 months ending in May. The fruits and vegetables index rose 6.1% over the last 12 months. As you can see, there's a trend going here, right? Where things continue to go up. They're more expensive now than they were this time last year. Well, has anything happened that may have caused that? Are there any policies that may be contributing to things being more expensive? For example, when someone talks about the tariffs that were enacted, and as I've said again and again, a tariff is a tax on the importing company. Meaning if I own a business and I want to bring in goods from another country outside of the U.S., and there's a tariff in place for those particular goods, now I have to pay more to get those goods into the country. Well, in my experience and from everything that I have learned in my business background, I can almost assure you that if it's my business, I'm not eating those costs. I am definitely passing those on to the consumers. So if it costs me 20 cents more to get the goods into the country, you can best believe I'm going to charge at least 20 cents more, right, to the consumer. Probably more than that because I want to pad my margins. All right. So when you go look at the consumer price index and you see that all of these different aspects of the economy, when you look at energy and gasoline and food, things are more expensive and they have been increasing month over month. You have to ask the question, are there policies that's impacting that in any way, shape, or form? And are we happy with that? It costs more to pay to put some gas in your car. To put gas in the tank, it costs more now than it did last year. I know that much. If you want to get that pack of turkey from the grocery store, it costs a little bit more now than it did last year. Do you like that? Are you enjoying paying more for the same thing you used to get? Are you enjoying having to pay more for fuel? I mean, I don't use diesel, so I'm so thankful for that. But if you do have to use diesel, right, which would include, say, like a lot of transportation companies use diesel at a large rate, or if you are an airline company and you need a specific type of fuel and it costs more than it did last year. And of course, the conflict that's been taking place in Iran hasn't helped situations with the Strait of Hormuz being closed, and maybe it'll open up sometime this week and maybe not. But what we do know that over the past 3 months, it surely hasn't been helping farmers here. It hasn't been helping with our food costs. It hasn't helped with our fuel costs. It's not helping. Do you believe that it's going well? Do you like paying more now than you did last year? Are you enjoying that? The question becomes, what do you want to do about that moving forward when you have an opportunity to elect new people into an office where they can then make some different decisions? Because I don't know about you, but I particularly don't want to pay more for things than I have to. But if you want to pay more, that is a choice that you get to make wherever you may be. I say all of these things because I want for you to go back and think about, all right, well, how do I know if things are going well? Well, if the priority is to make things better for the economy, Is that what's happening? And if things are supposed to be designed so that we are healthier than what we were, I don't see having an increase of measles cases in different places around the country. I don't see that being necessarily something that we should be aspiring to achieve. I mean, that's just me, but everyone gets to make choices. I say this though because in all seriousness, these are just a couple of examples of what you should be thinking about when you are truly evaluating what someone is or isn't doing once they have been elected and put into office. What are they doing? They say this is the priority for us. Okay. And now what are the results? What am I seeing that would support that you're actually doing the thing that you said you wanted to do? And if I look at the results, because that's the thing that you should always be paying attention to, the results. Don't pay attention to the rhetoric, pay attention to the results. What has actually come to be after all of the talking? Did you actually do what you said you were going to do? Do you have proof? Are we keeping receipts of what happened? And I think that it's important for us as the electorate to take the time to ask questions, to do research, to actually go and see what's happening. Where are we right now? What should we be doing moving forward? How would you assess the situation? Because, for example, and I'm going to get ready to wrap this up, but we have to be honest. Okay, there was a nice event, I think, maybe I didn't watch, on the White House lawn this weekend, but I don't know how that helps with lowering the cost of goods and services. And I certainly don't know how having a fighting event on the White House lawn, how that helps with reducing the number of measles cases in America. It's entertainment for someone, but entertainment doesn't bring down the cost of fuel. Entertainment doesn't reduce the number of cases of measles, which is approaching 2,100 as of June the 17th. So I don't know about you, but I don't know how a ballroom is going to help bring down the cost of goods. And I don't know how a fighting event at the White House is going to do that either. Yes, entertainment, and it is a distraction, but what is the end result of that? And that's the thing that I want you to ask yourself. Regardless of who's in office, regardless of which party is in charge, you need to ask the question, what are they doing with the power they have? And what's the end result of their tenure? What did they actually accomplish for the everyday person who's just trying to go to work, do their job, pay their bills, raise their kids, feed their families? How are the policies actually helping them each and every day? And if you're having a hard time finding it, even in the actual numbers on a macro scale, because CPI is macro, and none of this is good when everything's increasing, and I didn't even get into the comparisons. What I can do next time is talk more about the comparisons for sure, but from what we've seen already, it's like, hey man, this doesn't necessarily look good and it doesn't sound good. And what can we do to decrease in 2027 the number of measles cases that we have right now? Hopefully we can at least cut that in half, because at the rate we're going, it looks like we're going to exceed last year. Just food for thought. So again, go back, look at the government website, start asking questions about what are people getting done. Get away from the rhetoric, get away from just people telling you stuff, find the sources, and then you can see for yourself whether or not things are getting done.